The Black and White Network now proudly presents Moms Across America, a new program where women can speak their minds openly and freely without fear of reprisal. Moms Across America is about the issues of the day confronting America from a mom's point of view. And now, here are the moms.
Will more than two banks fail? Is it time to buy gold? Recently, the FDIC took over two banks that were in trouble. Now we have reports that an additional 20 regional banks have in excess of $650 billion in bond losses. The Fed admits that their increase in interest rates have done little to bring inflation under control. They may well increase the amount and frequency of interest rates. Isn't it time to consider gold in your portfolio? From January 1st, 2023 to today, the price of gold is up twice as much as the S&P 500. Go to blacksandwhites.us, click on the gold bar, and reach out to Advisors Metals and ask Ira, is gold right for you? Call now. It's important.
And welcome to Moms Across America. This is Vicki Tompkins with my co-host Annie, and we're going to be talking about a couple of things today that are pretty disturbing, I think, for most parents, grandparents, anybody that has any workings with children that they care about. But before we get started, I want to remind everyone we are still pushing the Constitution because we know how important it is to know what our rights are. So when we are met with problems, we can say, no, this is my constitutional right, or no, you cannot do that because this is my constitutional right. So please go to ashbrook.org/Constitution and you can download your free Constitution. It is so important. Moms, dads, make sure that you share this with your children because they need to know what our nation is all about. So what we're going to get into today, we're going to talk about a couple of things dealing with children and some of the things that people are doing that they call good, like drag shows and things like this. And we're also going to talk about a book by Miriam Grossman that talks about how to deal with your child who may say, Mom, I know I'm a girl, but I feel like I'm a boy. I'm in the wrong body. And you'll know how to deal with that. So how we want to start it off is, I'm not sure how many of you are aware of this because I was not aware of it until recently. But in Marshall, Wisconsin, and now across the nation, and this has been going on for 7 years. How I did not know about this, I don't know. But on June 17th, there was an event, if you want to call it that. And it's basically a nude bicycle ride. I got to tell you, Annie, when I saw this, I thought, I'm being punked. This can't be real. I went back several times just to make sure I was seeing what I was seeing. But it's basically naked people, mostly men from what I saw, which was equally disturbing, because most of them were out of shape men. Anyway,
I was going to say, I did not see a good-looking one among them.
I digress. I thought, how could grown people think this is okay? Because you know there's going to be children in the crowd. I don't care what you do. There's always going to be children in the crowd. What was your thought when you looked at all this?
I'm going to take it from the aspect of a retired cop. And I still have my criminal penal code law, which I marked the sections for indecent exposure and endangering the welfare of a child. And I am horrified that this is allowed to proceed. That aside, on the lighter side of that, the way they just violated, public decency laws, how the hell were those men able to not injure their junk on the bicycle seat?
I wasn't going to go there. I was not even going to go there. And I know we're laughing, but I got to tell you, the lunacy of this and from this to the drag queen reading shows and these guys. Okay, I was listening to, I don't know who I was listening to because I listened to so many different people on different aspects, But they were talking about how they had this drag show scheduled in a particular area, and the people were protesting it. I wonder why. But anyway, the people were protesting it and said children are not allowed to come. You can have it if you want to, but no children, no minors. So that's all children under 18 are not allowed to come. And guess what they did?
They allowed the
They
children.
canceled it. They canceled it. So what does that tell you about
Mhm.
this group of people? They say, we're not grooming your children. This is not about hurting children. Then why did you cancel it?
This has been a long objective. If you recall, I believe it was about a decade ago, MAMBA, the Men and Boys,
Yes.
right,
Yes.
had publicly said they were looking to legalize pedophilia.
Yep.
They were looking to legalize it. And what, like a bunch of fools and lemmings jumping off the cliff, we just followed along and said, no, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Well, listen, folks, it has happened. They have found a way to legalize pedophilia. And it started with this bicycle ride 7 years ago. It started with the teaching of sexual perversions in the classroom. I'm sorry, you do not need to teach a 5 and 6 year old how to masturbate. They
Lord.
opened the door with supposed health education, and it has now become sex education, which has become sexual perversion. And what have we got? A whole generation of children growing up not knowing what it is to be a normal child.
Yes.
They have stolen the childhood from our nation.
Yes, I agree with you. And it's really sad when you have people in positions of power, I'll just say it that way, who I don't know if they're just totally blind or them getting reelected is that important to them that 1% of the population can influence what they do. But for them to not even question. And I know in this article that the part that I was reading about this Madison, Wisconsin naked bike ride, there was a 10-year-old girl that was photographed
Mm-hmm.
nude,
Yes.
and the police, and I know this is going to make you mad, the police said, well, there's no ordinance or laws against any of that, so there's really nothing we can do. Because people were outraged seeing this young child photographed by these grown men, because it was mostly men, and put on Facebook.
That is sexual exploitation of a minor, and that is
Exactly.
BS. There are no laws for that. BS. There are a ton of laws against pedophilia,
Yep.
sexual exploitation of the child, endangering the welfare of the child, possession and production of pornography.
And you know there's a Looney Tune out there that's going to take that picture and have it somewhere. And it's like, what are you guys thinking? It's almost like they're so wrapped up in their own, well, I guess you can call it perversion, but their own joys.
Mhm. Yeah.
That they're not even thinking about the ramifications. It's almost like a politician. A politician will go up there and they'll make a decision on something, but they don't take the time to look at what the ramifications could be. Like here where I live, they decided to start a 10-cent tax on bags. Well, that money, 6 cents of every 10 cents goes back to the government in that area. And then the other 4 cents, the business has to write all these checks and stuff, and crazy. And the guy who brought up the bill and passed it said, well, I didn't think about what the ramifications could be. It's the same thing with this. People, it's like, oh, this makes me happy, so let me do it. But they don't think about the ramifications of other people.
It is the gratification of the moment is what is driving this. Do what feels good now. And no one's talking about what is going to happen to that little girl. Her
Exactly.
face is being plastered across the media, across social networks, across the pornography chain of pedophiliacs. This child is being sexually exploited. And
Yep.
what is that going to do to her? Oh, look how many hits you're getting on TikTok, little Laura Jane. Now Laura Jane is feeling this is perfectly acceptable behavior. And her friends going, look how many friends she's got on TikTok. Let's do the same thing too.
There you go.
And fads spread very fast through young girl population, not
Yes.
necessarily young boys, but the vast majority. If we look at history from anorexia, bulimia, in the 90s, it was high school pregnancies, and now it's
Right.
transgenderisms. And the fad is with the young female population. This girl, she's going to grow up completely confused. And when she becomes a young adult and she gets her life straight, if she ever does, she's going to have this follow her for the rest of her life. Every
Yeah.
job interview, every person she dates, it will traumatize this girl. And they don't care because it feels good for them at the
Yep.
moment. And the liberals love the publicity.
Yeah, and the whole idea of this bike ride is supposed to be to promote
Body
body
awareness.
image. You don't have to be afraid of your body image. You don't have to do that in public to not be afraid of your body image. And oh, it's also promoting renewable energy. Seriously? Is that oh, that's the bike piece of the whole.
Oh, wait. You had to use petrochemicals to make that bicycle. So if they wanted to be energy efficient, get off their fat butts and walk.
Gosh, I'm telling you, some of the stuff that these people say to hide, they're not doing it very well. Because for you to say this is about body image and then promoting renewable energy, what are you going to do? Get the hug treers, you know, all behind you? I mean, come on. Stop trying to make your perversion everything you want it to be, because it's hurting people. It's destroying young people's lives in particular, and this needs to stop. And I don't know how we're going to stop this, Annie, but I got to tell you, something needs to be done. We need some grown-ups in the house, because right now we have a bunch of people who didn't do very well in school who are pushing this stuff. I'm telling you.
I know. Grown-ups of America, stand up.
Oh my goodness, I can't believe it. But anyway, um, I can really digress on this and really start attacking people for their ignorance, but I'll leave that alone. We have about a minute in this segment. And like I said, we're going to talk about Miriam Grossman, who wrote a book about basically dealing with kids with dysphoria. She's a psychologist, I believe.
Yes.
And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're hoping to get her on our show here soon. But Annie, can you take us out, and then we'll come back in the second half, and we'll talk about Miss Grossman's book, because Annie's read some of it already, and she's going to lead us out in that.
Well, I would say, folks, find out what your local laws are. Find out what's going on inside your local school, your children's clubs, and everything else. And for heaven's sake, get the Constitution. I've had this one copy since 1976. You see, it's a little dog-eared. Know it. Follow it. And God bless you.
Yes. All right. We'll be right back in a minute.
Inflation for most people is causing them to use their credit cards to try and make up for income shortfalls. How big is this problem? In the second quarter of 2022, Americans added $46 billion to their credit card balances. Some of that could be you. The Federal Reserve Consumer Credit Report showed that the rate of interest on credit cards went from 14.56 to 16.65%. Those Americans struggling with credit card debt saw their delinquency rates escalate from 1.66% to 1.81%. The Cambridge Debt Consolidation Program may be able to help you reduce the interest rates by 2/3 and cut your time to pay off the debt from 30 years to as little as 5 years. If you're struggling and you want professional and objective help getting your credit house in order, then call 1-855-435-2066 or go to the...
So welcome back to Moms Across America. We were just talking about the nude bike ride that was happening in Wisconsin and other cities across our country. And our producer reminded us that in Toronto, Canada, there was a similar bike ride. And guess who sponsored it? No other than Bud Light. Have they not lost enough money already? Anyway, let's go back. We're going to start talking about the book by Miriam Grossman. So, Annie, what did you think about it? I did see a video that she did. She's a powerful woman. She does not pull punches. She
Well,
just tells the truth.
I interview a lot of authors on my show, and you can always hear whether or not they wrote the book themselves or someone else wrote it for them. You hear her voice, you hear her frustration, and she is someone who actually came to understand this, but she came from the left side. She was a psychiatrist, Miriam Grossman, and the book is called Trans Nation. And she started treating kids, and the Hippocratic Oath tells you, do no harm.
Do no harm.
And she saw harm being done. So she began to question. And then she began to face cancel culture. And then she started doing her research. And what she learned and what comes out in this book will frighten every single parent. You would never want your children to go out in public or be on social network ever again if you were to read what goes on in this book, and the treatments and the medications and the harm that is being done.
Yes.
And then you question why the highest suicide rate now is through people that are transgenders. And why is there a large community now growing of those with sex change regret?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Now, when they first pioneered the sex change operations in the 1950s, it was very rarely done, and only after in-depth psychological analysis, medical analysis, and various things that went. And it would take years before a person ever became a transgender and had the full surgery.
Mm-hmm.
It took a lot. So the doctors wanted to do no harm. They wanted to make sure this was the right thing for the person, and they weren't doing it because of some other issue, whether it's ADHD, autism, anxiety disorder, or anything else. But
Yes.
again, we talked in the previous segment of acting on the moment, doing what feels good at the moment. This is what she exposes in the book. Doing what feels good in the moment. And
Yeah.
amazingly, the vast amount of parents facing children going through transgenderism are not people of Christian conservative values and backgrounds. It's the progressive liberal backgrounds. So it makes you wonder if there is some truth in bringing a moral structure to that child at an early age.
Yes. One of the things I thought was interesting when I watched her video, it was like a panel, and I didn't get to see the doctor who spoke before her, but she debunked a lot of what that doctor was saying, because the doctor was saying that it's almost like you get to choose what your gender is. And she was like, absolutely not. When you, at conception, it is determined
Yes.
what sex you will be. And yeah, there's other things that happen where people are born with two genders, blah blah blah.
Hermaphrodites.
That
Yes.
is so rare. So
Yeah.
so rare. So to throw that in the mix, I think is being disingenuous at minimum.
You
But
know,
she talked about how a lot of this is psychological,
yes. Yeah.
and we cannot allow this to happen to children. And I really believe she is saying, parents, stand up for your child. If
Exactly.
you know that this is wrong, stand up and not be influenced by the ridiculousness that people say that your child, would you rather have a live daughter who wants to transition to a boy or a dead daughter? It's craziness
Yes, it is.
how
It
they
is.
try to scare people,
Well,
parents.
you are so correct, because you're born either XY or XX, male or female. And when those chromosomes join at conception, it influences how the brain develops.
Yes.
And you can make as many surgeries as you want. When you're dead and buried 1,000 years from now, they dig you up and they do a DNA test on you, and you're either XY or XX. You cannot surgically alter that, period.
Yes.
She writes a story about, a heartbreaking story about twin boys. And when they were born, one boy, his genitalia was badly damaged. Rather than attempting to repair it or use other treatments that will help it to mend itself, the doctor at that moment decided, well, since he's been badly damaged, let's make her a she.
Oh my goodness.
This is straight out of the womb. And they did the surgeries. They treated him as a her. These were twins. And they couldn't understand why this boy growing up, or this girl, as they allege him to be, growing up, was such a really wild tomboy. These are twins. And if anyone knows twins at birth, there is a hyper connection between them.
Yes.
And when it came time to do the full gender reassignment of changing the internal organs, it stopped there. But what happened? He ended up growing up and having a family, but he committed suicide shortly after his brother died from an overdose.
Oh.
2 young lives were lost because a doctor decided to do an experiment and say, we can change your gender at birth. No, you can't. And you can't alter it as you go through life. You can alter how you live your life, yes. But God gave you something. And how you learn to live with it says about who you are as a person.
Yeah.
If you have a mental illness, whether or not it's an anxiety disorder, or with the COVID lockdown, a lot of other psychological disorders came to light, or ADHD, or autism, or any other things that may affect how you think and feel, there's help for that. You don't need to mutilate your body or mutilate the body of your child because you can't control the child.
That's so sad.
But we're looking at abuse of these children. And I'm sorry, you cannot reverse it. You can never reverse it.
One of the things that you mentioned earlier, you were talking about the detransitioning that's happening with a lot of these young people now. Because I was watching a panel of about 4 or 5 people who transitioned when they were young, and now they're in their 20s and they're detransitioning. And they talk about the pain. They talk about now they can't have children and all the different things that go along with this. How in the world can any person in their right mind think that it's okay to let a child tell them? Now I'm talking about children. I'm talking about preteens, teenagers, saying, well, I was born a girl, but I want to be a boy. I feel like I'm a boy on the inside. And you do all the things that it would require for that person to become a boy. And they're still not happy.
No.
They still have the same issues going on in their thoughts and in their minds and in their emotions, when maybe they just needed to talk to somebody.
Well, what it is there are no studies, period. There's nothing out there. They're giving the puberty blockers, which causes bad osteoporosis.
Yes.
Children as young as 11 have the skeletal body of someone in their 80s and 90s. I mean, it causes extreme abdominal pain. It causes a lot higher cases of cancer.
Oh, my Lord.
The medical conditions that we are not aware of, that puberty blockers alone do. Now add in the hormone therapy treatments they will have to take for the rest of their lives after they did the gender reassignment surgeries. They will forever be on these medications. And they will never get off them.
No.
And even when they detransition, they still have to take certain medications to prevent rejection of the new body.
And who's making all that money on those medications?
Dr. Money is talking. The local healthcare ATM.
Right? And it seems like there's always somebody that's making a boatload of money off the suffering of other people. And
That's
I don't
exactly it.
understand, especially in the medical profession, like you were saying earlier. You take a Hippocratic oath and you will do no harm. You do whatever it takes to help
Mhm.
a person. Why is this become like so popular? Well, like I mentioned, the drugs. Somebody's making money off of that. And
Pfizer,
then they're doing
Moderna,
this and the studies. Of course, we have to do studies.
but there
So
are
the
no
government's
studies.
making money.
No, there are. That's the whole thing. There are no studies on the effects of this on children transitioning. So they're doing medical treatments when there's no standard for it. And
I
yet,
can promise you, being in the political arena, there's going to be so much fallout from this. I can promise you there will be a committee that will be formed by the government,
and they'll do nothing.
costing us trillions of dollars to find nothing. That's just what they do. So it's all, and I hate to say this, but it's all about somebody making money. It's all about pushing an agenda at the expense of other people. I can go back to like the Tuskegee experiment on black men. It's all about somebody making some money somewhere.
Hmm.
And that's sad. We
Yeah.
we have a whole generation that can't even populate the planet because now they cannot have children.
And now think about this, and I've mentioned this many times before. First, they tried to kill us with abortion.
Yes.
You can't produce. So now our population will decrease. Oh, but now we need people to fill those jobs and spaces. So let's bring in illegal aliens. But wait a minute, the
There you go.
abortion pro life is pushing back. So now you can't kill the child in the womb. So let's kill the child after the womb by doing these trans experiments on them because now
Yeah.
they can't produce children and they'll have a higher rate of suicide. So we don't have to worry about them because by the time they get into Social Security and Medicare age, they're not going to exist anyway. What a
I,
better
I
way to kill America and kill its people off than stealing our children. And that's what they're doing. They're stealing our children.
I got to tell you, moms across America, this kind of stuff breaks my heart. Having worked in education and worked with young people in bad communities over the years, and seeing how precious young people are and what is happening to them today, it truly does break my heart. And we've got to stand up against this. We can't, this is not one of those things you can sit back and say, well, it's not affecting me. Oh, yes, it is. It's affecting all of society. So it is time for us to stand up. Please, I'm looking forward to trying to get Miss Grossman on our show so she can give us even more details about her book and her work. We're out of time, but thank you so much for joining us today. I I'm sorry to have to end it on this type of note, but I hope it puts a fire under you, moms across America, to become even more engaged. Again, go to ashbrook.com or .org, excuse me, /Constitution and get your free Constitution so you'll know what your rights are. And as I always say, moms across America, you are America. And we'll see you next time. Bye bye.
Thank you for joining us today, and we'd like to hear your comments or questions. So go to bwradionetwork.com. That's bwradionetwork.com and give us your questions or comments. And thanks for joining us today.